It's Thursday, the 29th of February 2024. Welcome to the Fast 5 Business News by Fear and Greed, where we give you the top 5 business stories you need to know in just 5 minutes. I'm Michael Thompson, and good morning, Sean Aylmer.
Good morning, Michael.
Sean, 5 stories, 5 minutes. Let's go. Story number 1, the annual pace of inflation has slowed to 3.4%. And while it is heading in the right direction, economists think there's still a way to go before homeowners can look forward to some interest rate cuts.
The Australian Bureau of Statistics monthly inflation indicator was lower than forecast on the back of weaker goods inflation, but the all-important services inflation remains high. In January, services inflation was at 3.7%, well above that 3.4% level. Rental prices inflation was unchanged at 7.4%, which is elevated and reflects record low vacancy rates and strong rental demand. At the other end of the spectrum, holiday travel prices, they were down by more than 7% over the year to January. Basically, demand slowed. That's pushed down airfares and accommodation costs. One item I note, Michael, interestingly enough, lamb and goat prices are down 21%. Who knew? Federal Treasurer Jim Chalmers said annual inflation is still too high, but progress is being made. Now, remember, the January figures only include about 60% of the quarterly basket. That's really what the Reserve Bank looks for. You may actually even find a bit of a tick up in inflation in coming months, but certainly the trend for inflation is down, and that buoys hope for a rate cut later in the year.
Later in the year, you say, Sean, so I'm guessing then the Reserve Bank Board won't be cutting rates when they meet in a few weeks' time?
Alas, no. The cash rate is likely to stay at 4.35%. In fact, markets have priced in a cash rate at that level for most of the year. There'll be more interest in the wording used. Will the Reserve Bank actually come out and say, we no longer have a mild tightening bias, we're actually thinking about lowering rates? That's kind of the next step.
Okay, moving on to story number 2 now. And Flight Centre has recorded its second strongest start to a new year in about 4 decades. And it's upbeat about domestic and international airfares falling later this year.
The travel company's underlying earnings almost doubled for the 6 months to December, though the result was lower than expected and its share price fell about 4%. The company said after 4 years of disruption and then a gradual recovery, 2024 is set to be a watershed for travel. Boss Graham Turner reckons airfares will come down about 9% in the next 6 months, saying increased capacity from Turkish Air, Singapore Airlines, Delta and United had forced prices down more than 10% during the December quarter. The improved result reflected solid demand for leisure and corporate travel. Turner was upbeat about the current 6 months, and he said given the sector's only at 70% of pre-COVID volumes, things should improve for the company.
Story number 3, this is an interesting one. The co-chief executive and founder of Mexican-themed restaurant chain Guzman y Gomez says only McDonald's is doing better in Australia in terms of customer patronage.
Stephen Marks wants 1,000 Australian stores. Currently, it has 209 outlets, of which 185 are restaurants, and he wants to grow its numbers across Japan and Singapore. Also wants to grow its US footprint to about 15 stores based on that Chicago area. Guzman y Gomez isn't listed. There's been an on-again, off-again float for a while now. Yesterday, it said for the December half, losses were $4 million on the back of a 30% jump in revenue. Mr. Marks said the Mexican-themed chain was close to recession-proof, as proved by its continued strong growth despite cost of living pressures across the community. For the record, McDonald's has about 1,100 stores, Subway's at 1,200, Domino's is at 700. Guzman y Gomez still has a way to go.
Story number 4, new restrictions on vapes come into law tomorrow as the government considers an even greater clampdown, Sean, including possibly a total ban in coming months.
The government has already banned the importation of single-use vapes, and from tomorrow, new rules come into effect, including an importation ban on all vapes without a licence. The Australian Border Force and the Therapeutic Goods Administration has seized more than 360,000 vapes worth almost $11 million since the new rules took effect. Yesterday, Health Minister Mark Butler indicated he wanted to see the closure of vape shops. 9 out of 10 of those are located within walking distance of schools, and he said the government would introduce another tranche of legislation but needs the support of the opposition. He also revealed that the government has $250,000 allocated to partnerships with Spotify and influencers to lead the anti-vaping campaign.
Last one, story number 5, and as an Apple user, I'm a bit sad about this story, Sean, because Apple's abandoned plans to build a self-driving car after a decade of trying, putting the future of the world's second largest company firmly back into tech gadgets.
And that's really where it's done best. Apple has told employees it is winding down its car project and has reassigned some of the 2,000 staff involved to its AI efforts. So the future isn't about a self-driving car for about $100,000. Instead, it's all about AI and things like the very well-received Vision Pro headset. The leaked announcement triggered a surge in Apple's share price. Apple still earns more than half of its revenue, about 58%, from the iPhone. Wearables and accessories contribute about 10% at the moment. What was interesting, Michael, the Apple Mac, it's now just 6.5% of turnover. iPads are 5.9%.
Sean, do you reckon this means that they've officially parked the car project?
I think so, Michael. I think so.
Oh, God, I'm sorry. That's a terrible way to finish. The top 5 business stories in 5 minutes. Thank you, Sean.
Thank you, Michael.
It's Thursday, the 29th of February, 2024. Remember to hit follow on the podcast. And if 5 minutes isn't enough, you can find our longer daily show called Fear and Greed Business News, wherever you listen to podcasts. And don't forget as well to check out our sister podcast, How Do They Afford That? All about making your money work a bit harder for you. This week's episode is all about manifesting, believe it or not. I'll put a link in today's show notes. I'm Michael Thompson, and that was the Fast 5 Business News by Fear and Greed. Have a great day.